And it's hard to find that time to get out and talk about that issue that will take away health care from millions, that will tax the health care for millions, that will raid the Social Security Trust Fund, that will actually cut $500 billion out of the Medicare budget. But there are things in this bill that I think the other side does not want to talk about that's in here. And that's exactly why we feel compelled to come here to offer amendments at the Rules Committee to get this thing at least where the American people can have some faith that you're going to have an honest debate. The number of sweetheart and sleazy deals in this bill, the bill that this chamber will vote on tomorrow, is sickening. It pits one American against another American. It pits one neighbor against another neighbor. And it happens time and time and time again in your legislation. If you're a retired UAW worker living next door to a retired tool and die machinist, guess what? There's a special provision where you get offsets for the increase in your premiums for a UAW worker, but the tool and die machinist gets nothing except a higher tax bill. It's wrong. And it was a special provision tucked in this bill. If you're a senior citizen in Florida, there's a special provision that says your Medicare Advantage stays intact. But if you're a senior citizen living in Ohio or New York or Michigan, guess what? Not for you. You get treated different. You lose your Medicare Advantage. It's wrong. It's sleazy. It's un-American. If you're a UAW worker in Michigan, you're going to get a higher tax on your insurance plan. If you're a longshoreman in New York City, you don't pay the higher tax on your insurance plan. It's unseemly, it's sleazy, and it's wrong. These are provisions tucked into this bill we can only assume to get to the magic number to pass on this floor. You know, if you're a banker in Michigan, you no longer, after this bill is passed, will be able to make a private student loan. That's right. But if you're a banker from North Dakota, guess what? You'll get to make a private student loan. It's un-American. And each and every one of these sleazy deals ought to be brought to this floor and eliminated from this bill. We'll have that opportunity at Rules Committee. We'll see the commitment of this chamber to be honest and transparent. Not to mention the fact that we'll stop the Social Security raid to pay for a bill that's $1 trillion to the deficit. And do you realize, Madam Speaker, why the impact of this is so important? Because this administration has had more deficit spending than every other president of the United States combined. It is shocking and it's breathtaking. And the arrogance of this chamber to bring such an un-American bill with special sweetheart sleazy deals tucked in and arm twisting to make it happen is wrong. I know that the soldiers I served with fought for a unified country, a country that believed in liberty and personal responsibility and limited government. I know that today we ought to stand for that too. And we ought to ask all of this to come to light and put those amendments as a part of the bill and clean up our act in Congress.
Gentlewoman from Guam.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Again, I wish that the Republican side had been able to wait till later this evening during their 2 hours to raise their concerns about health care, but there are some things that merit response in the interests of truth and the American way. The gentleman before me is extraordinary. This president has deficits total larger than every other president combined. No, actually, yes, we do have a record deficit this last year. Most of it is inherited from George Bush, but it's true. Now, that's a very high year, but George Bush is the one who doubled the national debt and did accumulate more debt than every other president before him, before the collapse of Wall Street, because of the deregulatory agenda of the Bush administration and the Republican Party. No, every ounce of which I fought on the floor of this House, which brought America to its knees, which dissolved people's savings and 401ks and everything else for greedy bankers and investors and others. And the Republicans put that agenda in place when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. with their deregulatory approach. So to stand here, it's even factually true. Yes, I'm very concerned about the astounding deficits, and we've got to deal with that. But George Bush doubled the debt. There is a record one-year increase. It does not exceed even the amount of debt George Bush accumulated. He may be looking into the future. I will not yield to the gentleman, but it's not factually true. To the gentleman before him, who talked about bankrupting people because we're going to give them access to quality, affordable health care. I wish he would tell that to the woman from my district who I talked to, who got cancer, had an individual policy, and guess what? She paid her premiums, and when it became time for renewal, the company said, sorry, we don't renew policies of people who have cancer. Thank you very much for your premiums. Or the gentleman I met in the unemployment office. Could I have an additional minute?
I yield an extra minute to the gentleman.
The gentleman I met in the unemployment office, yeah, he had rights to purchase his health care under COBRA, but the cost of his health care was 3/4 of his unemployment benefit. His wife was deathly ill. This is a tough guy. He cried in public in that office. That won't happen again if we pass this legislation tomorrow. That gentleman will not be forced to choose between keeping his home, feeding his family, and getting his wife needed health care. Under your plan, that continues. Status quo. You guys are the pets of the insurance industry, and you know it. And then the woman who had needed a double mastectomy, and they had a special team from her insurance company. That was great. But their job was to find a way to get her off the plan. They reviewed her history. They found she'd been to a dermatologist for acne. They said she hadn't reported it. They rescinded her policy. And a gentleman from your side of the aisle had to threaten that insurance company publicly to get her reinstated. This inhibits that. We need to take on the health insurance industry in America and prevent these abuses, and you guys did nothing about that when you were in charge, and your proposals for the future would do nothing about that.
Gentleman's time has expired.